In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make a summer quiche. It's a really, really easy, really tasty dish. I'm making it a summer quiche because I'm filming it in June, but it's really, really easy. If you just Google seasonal vegetables at the time that you want to make your quiche, you'll easily find some other ingredient ideas that you could add into your own quiche. For the ingredients then, I'm going to use 200 grams of plain flour, 100 grams of butter, and then enough water just to bind those ingredients together and form a ball of dough. And that's going to be my pastry case, which I'm going to put into my 20cm diameter flan dish. And then for the filling, I'm going to be using 3 eggs, 100 millilitres of milk, and then to make it seasonal, a small handful of asparagus, a handful of peas, an onion, and then I like to add cheese into my quiches, so I've got a handful of cheese which I've already grated as well. And then for the equipment, as I've said before, you're going to need your oven-proof flan dish. You're going to want to have a chopping board and sharp knife for preparing any vegetables, and then a grater if you want to grate some cheese. You're going to need a large mixing bowl for your butter and your flour, and then a spoon so you can add your water in gradually so you don't add too much water. Cling film for your ball of dough when it's chilling in the fridge before blind baking. A fork which you can use for whisking up your eggs. Before you do that though, you could also be able to use this for pricking and making indents into your pastry case. And then to roll out your pastry, you're going to need a rolling pin. And then we're going to blind bake it so we get a nice crisp base, really nice crisp pastry base. You are going to want to blind bake it first because the wet filling might make the bottom of your pastry case soggy. So we're going to blind bake it, and for that we're going to want some foil or some oven greaseproof paper. Be fine, just line it. Then if you've got them, some baking beads. If you haven't got baking beads, don't worry, because what I'll do in the video is I'll show you an alternative for getting your pastry nice and thin and crisp. Okay, but if you have them, then use them. Okay, let's get started. Start by preheating your oven. I would say 200 degrees centigrade or 180 if you've got a fan oven, and that's the equivalent to gas mark 6. Tip the flour into the bowl and add your butter. Next, use your thumbs and fingers to rub the fat and the flour together. Notice I've cut my butter into cubes to make this job easier. And it's really, really important when you do this to coat all of the flour particles in the fat. When you do this, it gives the flour particles a waterproof coating which stops the flour from absorbing any liquid and forming gluten. Gluten formation will make your dough stretchy and want to rise when you bake it. So by doing this, you will ensure that you will get nice, thin, crispy pastry. Use your fingers as sieves to make sure that you haven't got any white, dry, uncoated flour at the bottom of your bowl. So use your fingers just to mix it around and find any big bits of butter that you've missed and any dry white flour. Okay, so what you should be left with is a breadcrumb looking consistency. So all of the butter and the flour have been rubbed together, and so your mixture now should be quite dry, and quite consistent. There should be no obviously big lumps of butter in there, and all of your flour particles have been coated, so it should look like breadcrumbs. Next, I'm going to add water to my breadcrumb looking mixture, 1 spoonful at a time, until it forms a ball of dough. After each spoonful, I'm going to mix the water in, and then when I think it's starting to make my dry mixture come together, I'll try and squeeze it with my hand. This is sticking together now. So I'm just going to bring it into a ball of dough. I don't need to add any more liquid now. This is perfect. It's important to remember when you're making pastry, never overwork it. Don't knead it. Don't keep folding it and rolling it. As soon as you've got your dry ingredients coming together, just stop. I'm now going to take some cling film and wrap up my ball of dough. This is now going to go into the fridge to rest and chill for 30 minutes so that my butter goes hard again. My pastry dough has now firmed up in the fridge and is ready to be rolled out. I'm going to sprinkle my work surface with some flour. And I'm going to make sure that my rolling pin is also coated in flour to stop anything from sticking to my pastry. Next, I'm going to roll out my pastry, pressing quite gently initially. If it starts to crack, don't panic. You better patch it up if needs be. So I've rolled it out slightly in one direction. I'm now going to turn it a quarter turn, just make sure I've still got flour underneath it and flour on top. And I'm going to roll it out slightly again. So I'm not rolling it too much in one direction. Try to keep it relatively circular. So I've rolled it out again. And I'm going to turn it a quarter turn. Roll it out a bit more. So remember, I'm pressing quite gently, just enough pressure to make it change shape. Then before it gets too far and becomes too elongated, I'm going to turn it a quarter turn again. The idea is to try and keep the shape of your pastry the same as the shape of your oven dish. So obviously if you're using a square or a rectangular dish, then it's fine if you make your pastry dough slightly elongated in one direction or the other. However, if it's circular, which most people's dishes will be circular, you need to make sure you don't roll it out too much in one direction before you turn it a quarter turn again. Okay? And you need to be doing your own quality checks. So if you start to see it sticking, then you need to make sure that your pastry and your rolling pin is coated in flour again. If you see it starting to crack, then just patch up the cracks as you're going along. Don't leave it to get too bad and to the point where you can't repair it. So you need to be paying attention to what you're doing. If things do go slightly wrong when you're baking pastry, more often than not you can rectify it, but only if you are proactive about it. Okay, so another quarter turn, a few cracks starting to form, so I'm just going to squidge those together. Okay, roll it out a bit more. And what you want to be doing is just repeating this process of rolling out and turning until your pastry is big enough to cover the base of your oven dish and then up the sides and over the edge slightly. So what I'm looking for is for my pastry to probably be about this much wider in all directions. So that's probably about 2 inches, 5 centimetres, border all the way round. That's what I'm looking for. If you do start to notice little cracks forming and they're not staying together, a good tip is to wet your finger, okay, and just get it slightly moist. Now obviously this will mean if it's moist that it is likely to stick to your rolling pin. So once you've repaired, I've got some more there, once you've repaired any cracks that you haven't been able to do just by squishing it together, just make sure you sprinkle flour on top, again just to dry it out. There you go. So just use water to act like a bit of a glue if you need to. So this is nearly there now. Once it's got too big to comfortably pick up and move, your job will then be to use your rolling pin to roll it out in different directions. So if you're worried about it falling apart in your hand as you lift it, then instead of turning the pastry, you just change the direction of your rolling pin. So this now should be just about big enough all the way round for it to cover the base of my flan dish and the sides. So next I need to get my pastry into my flan dish, and I'm going to be using my rolling pin again to do that. So what we're going to do is put our rolling pin at the sort of third way down from the edge furthest away from you, and you're going to very carefully fold the end furthest away from you over the rolling pin. If you feel like you can't do that with your fingers, if you feel like you're going to damage the pastry, make it crack, make it break, there's no reason why you can't get hold of a spatula or a fish slice or something really flat, flatter than your fingers, to get under there to help you ease it away from your work surface. So fold it over, and then because you've got flour on here, it shouldn't stick to your rolling pin. So roll it away from your work surface. Bring your flan dish, your oven dish, to your pastry. You don't want to be carrying this around and handling it too much. So bring your oven dish to your pastry, carefully lift your pastry just high enough to get it over your dish, and then you can use your rolling pin to roll it back over, and then very gently with your hands you just want to ease your pastry into your oven dish. Again, if you have any cracks, don't panic. You want to be as gentle as possible, but if you do get any cracks or breaks in your pastry, then we're going to use that little technique with a damp finger, obviously using nice, clean, cold, drinkable water. But we use that as a bit of a glue just to patch it up. So I'll show you, I've left a few gaps here and left a few cracks just to show you how to do that. So with the side of your finger, just make sure that you've got a nice clean fit against the edge of your oven dish. Just all the way around, just make sure you've got a nice fit, like so. I'm just lifting and easing it right in to make sure that our pastry case mimics the shape of our oven dish. Okay, so that's good, that looks good now. So I'm just going to show you just how to patch up these if this sort of thing happens to you. With your bowl of clean drinking water, just dip your finger in like we did earlier and just dab it onto any cracks, and then you can either just try and pinch it together and then just very gently smooth, a bit like working with clay, just smooth it like so. Or if your cracks are really bad or you've misjudged putting your pastry into your case and you can't lift it back out again, if you end up with any big gaps, then what you can do is tear off, if you've got any excess on another side, yeah, tear it off, dampen your finger, okay, and just make one side wet. Okay, then you're going to lay that on top of the damp pastry, and we're just going to try and very gently, always gently, just squidge it together. If you can avoid having to do that, brilliant, because like I've said before, the less you handle pastry, the better. But if you do have to do a little bit of patchwork, it's not the end of the world, because the whole point of making short crust pastry is because you're going to be adding a filling. So in theory, if you've done this right, nobody will notice if you have had to do any patchwork at all. Okay. Assuming that you have used a glass, metal or ceramic dish for your pastry, it should be sturdy enough that you can use your rolling pin to neaten up the edges. So what you should be able to do is, with your rolling pin, just roll it along the edges. And can you see, as you roll it along the edges, the edge of your oven dish starting to show through? And then you can just ease the excess away with your fingers. And then if you've kind of squidged it into the dish, then you can just use your fingers just to put it back out again. So you can either use that method, which gets quite a nice neat finish. You want to try and make sure that you've got some pastry going over the lip, so nice and neat around the outside of the dish, but there should be some pastry on the lip of your dish to allow for any shrinkage when you cook it. So you can either use that method with your rolling pin, or you can use a knife, and it's a normal butter knife. Yeah, it doesn't need to be really sharp. Or you can just very carefully trim the excess like this. But again, remember, you want to be leaving a lip of pastry, so don't cut it here so you can see the top of your oven dish. Okay, where possible, you want to be cutting on the outside. And by the time, look, where I've patched it up, you won't be able to tell that you've had to do that. So there's two methods for trimming your pastry, like so. So when you've got your pastry case shaped and finished, I'm then going to show you what to do to make sure that it doesn't rise. You get a nice flat crisp bottom. So start off with a fork and just make some little indents. So we're not poking our fork all the way through and hitting the bottom of our dish. We just want to make some little indents, some little divots in our pastry. That's one way that we're going to stop it from rising in the oven and getting a nice crisp base. That's one thing. The next thing you're going to do is either using some foil or some greaseproof paper, You want to line your pastry case, and then you can do one of two things. So number one, you can use some baking beads and pour those in, and then your pastry can go in the oven like this to blind bake. Or if you don't have any baking beads, what you can do is you can take pieces of your excess pastry, scrunch it into a ball, okay, and use balls of scrunched up dough to weigh your pastry case down instead. So it's fine if you haven't got anything else to weigh your pastry case down with, it's fine just to use your excess dough and use it like this to blind bake your pastry case. So put your pastry case in the middle of your oven, and that's going to blind bake for 10 to 15 minutes. And what you're looking for is for your pastry case to just start to cook, to just start to golden. You don't want to completely cook it because it's going to go back in the oven when it's got its filling in, okay? And on that point, just to remind people, if people don't know what blind baking means or what it means to bake blind, it literally means to partly cook your pastry case with no filling in. While your pastry case is blind baking, you should have enough time to clear your work surfaces, clean them, and then start to prepare the filling. So remember, I've got a handful of asparagus, which I've already washed, an onion, I've got some frozen peas, I've already grated a handful of cheese, 3 eggs, 100 millilitres of milk, and then I've got a sharp knife to prepare my vegetables that need cutting. And then the bowl I used earlier just for water, I'm going to use to crack my eggs in to make sure I don't get any shelling. I'm going to start by preparing my washed asparagus stalks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give them a bit of a flex and find out where they want to naturally break. I'm going to get rid of this woody stalk. And this is the bit that I'm going to keep. So I'll do that again. So you're just going to just feel where it wants to naturally break, okay, and I'm going to get rid of the woody stalk. Like so. And then with my knife going downwards, I'm just going to essentially I'm going to rub my knife at an angle against the end where it broke. Don't want to have too much waste, so I'm just going to shave it down a little bit. You could use a peeler for this. I'm going to try and save on the amount of washing up I've got to do later though. Okay, I'm then going to cut them in half, and then using the bridge hold, I'm just going to cut them in half lengthways just to make them a bit flatter in my quiche. Those to one side. And then the rest I'm going to use the claw grip and I'm going to slice them this way. Next I'm going to do an onion. I'm going to slice my onion just into half moons. If you want to dice an onion and you're not sure how, have a look at my video, how to dice an onion, and I'll go through in that video how to do that efficiently and safely. Okay, but for this I'm just going to slice it. So I'm going to use the bridge hold again. I'm going to cut it straight down the middle. Okay, so each half has got a top and a bottom. I can then get rid of any bits that are loose coming away, just get rid of those. Then claw grip to cut the tops off, so I'm not touching the roots. I'm touching the roots as little as possible. Again, discard that. Then I'm going to peel it. It's a lot easier to see with a white onion than a red onion, whether or not you've peeled it properly. But what you're looking for at the moment, although I've taken some layers off, this still to me, I don't know if you can tell in the video, this to me looks quite matte still and quite papery. So I'm actually going to take off another layer until it looks really, really shiny. Okay. You could, if you wanted to, thinking about making it more seasonal, instead of using white or red onions, you could in fact use spring onions to make it really, really seasonal. Okay, so they're my onions, or my two halves of an onion, peeled and topped. So claw grip again. I'm just going to cut these into thin-ish slices. Like so. Go. I'm just going to separate these out. Okay. So there are my vegetables all ready to go into my quiche. I'm now going to go and prep my eggs. So I'm just going to use the side of my bowl, just short sharp tap. Okay, make a crack, then get your thumbs in and prise it open. Did you know, as well as bits of vegetables and vegetable peelings, you can actually compost eggshell as well? Now I haven't got any eggshell in my cracked eggs, but if I did, I would use a big piece of shell to scoop it out with. I wouldn't bother trying to use my fingers or a fork, because actually it's a lot easier to use the shell to do it. Okay, then either with a small whisk or a fork, just want to whisk your eggs. And again, if you've never whisked eggs before, what you want to be doing is not a stirring action. You want to almost be lifting the egg up. It's a little bit like turning the handle of a wheel to make a wheel go round. So it's that kind of circular motion, okay? And you can tilt your bowl up slightly if you want to. So you're lifting the egg up and then mixing it back in again. So here it is finished. So what you're looking for is an even colour, smooth consistency, so you can't see any separate bits of yolk or the white of the egg. I'm going to add my milk to my mixture. So here's my pastry case, finished blind baking. Just going to remove, so whether it's your baking beads or your excess pieces of dough, just lift up the corners of your foil or paper, okay, and put that somewhere that's heat proof, out of the way. Don't be tempted to put your baking beads back in the pot or the dough in the bin at this point, because it's going to be too hot. Alright, so just leave whatever it is that you've taken out of your pastry case, just leave that to cool down before you do anything else with it. Right, okay, so it's just started to colour. It's not completely cooked yet. So to my pastry case, I'm going to put in my peas. I'm going to put in my red onion. And I'm going to put in my small chunks of asparagus stalks. I'm then going to, so you can use your fingers or you could use a fork or a spoon. I'm going to try and just spread those out evenly so you don't get a slice of quiche that's all one flavour and not much of anything else. Okay, I like the way that my red onion stands out from the green. I could have chosen spring onion to make it more seasonal, but I went for red because I was just thinking about presentation. So that's my red and green mix. I'm going to sprinkle on my cheese. Big handful of cheese, really, really, really cheesy. Like so. I'm then going to pour over my egg mix. And then one by one, I'm going to put on my asparagus chops and try to arrange them in a decorative way. And here's my completed quiche ready for the oven. You'll have noticed that I haven't seasoned this. I haven't added any salt or pepper. I think that the ingredients that I've added to this will be enough flavour, and I will get some salt from the cheese that I've used. However, if you want to add a pinch of salt or pepper, then I would do that when you are making your egg milk mixture. So just put in a pinch of salt, a pinch of pepper into that, and then add it that way. Don't try and sprinkle it on top because you won't get the flavour all the way through. And so that will then go into the oven for between 30 and 40 minutes. What you're looking for is for the egg to be set and your vegetables to be slightly softened. So I'm going to put it on for 30 minutes and I'll check it at that point and decide how much longer it's going to need. And here is my completed quiche. It's got a nice golden top and the egg mixture has set.